The weight of grief has a way of making even the wealthiest man feel utterly poor. Marcus Chen, the billionaire CEO of Chen Technologies, learned this truth the night he lost his wife to cancer. As he lay in his sprawling Manhattan penthouse, surrounded by every luxury money could buy, he discovered that none of it, not the private jets, not the offshore accounts, not the empire he'd built from nothing, could fill the void left by Elena's absence. 6 months had passed, and the world saw a composed business titan. But alone in his bedroom each night, Marcus was just a broken man drowning in memories, wondering if anyone would notice if he simply disappeared. The first thing Marcus noticed about Sophia Martinez was how she seemed to make herself invisible. She'd arrive at 6 a.m. sharp, her petite frame moving silently through his penthouse like a ghost, cleaning rooms he barely used. She never made eye contact, never spoke unless spoken to, and would practically vanish into the wallpaper whenever he entered a room. It irritated him at first. Not her shyness, but what it represented. Everyone treated him differently, now either tiptoeing around his grief or pretending it didn't exist. His board members spoke to him in carefully measured tones. His friends had stopped calling. Even his own son away at college could barely manage their weekly phone calls without the conversation turning stiff and awkward. But Sophia? She was different in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Sometimes he'd catch a fleeting expression on her face, concern, he thought, before she'd quickly look away and return to dusting a bookshelf or folding linens with meticulous care. One particularly brutal Tuesday, after a 16-hour day of back-to-back meetings and a disastrous earnings call, Marcus returned home to find his dinner, carefully plated in the refrigerator with reheating, instructions in neat handwriting. Beside it sat a small vase with a single sunflower, Elena's favorite. He'd stood there for 10 minutes staring at that flower, something tight unwinding in his chest. The next morning, he decided to test her. The idea came from a place of desperate curiosity. He needed to know if there was any genuine kindness left in his life, or if everyone around him was just performing their roles. When Sophia arrived, Marcus was already in bed, eyes closed, breathing steadily. Through his barely parted eyelids, he watched her enter his bedroom to collect the laundry. She moved with her usual quiet efficiency, but then she paused. He felt her presence near the bed. Through slitted eyes, he could see her small figure standing there, and for a moment, he wondered if he'd made a mistake. But then she did something unexpected. She gently pulled the blanket, which he'd kicked off during his restless night, back over him. Her movements were so tender, so careful, as if tucking in a child. Then she noticed the framed photograph of Elena on his nightstand. Knocked over sometime during the night, she set it upright, her fingers lingering on the frame for just a moment, but she didn't leave. Marcus heard soft footsteps moving to the window, then the quiet whisper of curtains being drawn. Not completely closed, but adjusted so the morning sun wouldn't hit his face directly. She picked up the 3 empty whiskey glasses on his nightstand without a sound, then hesitated again. "You're not sleeping well," she whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear. "I'm so sorry you're hurting." His heart clenched. When was the last time anyone had acknowledged his pain out loud? She moved toward the door, but then stopped. Marcus watched through his lashes as she pulled something from her pocket, a small, worn notebook. She scribbled something quickly, tore out the page, and left it on the dresser before quietly exiting. The moment the door clicked shut, Marcus opened his eyes. His hands were shaking as he reached for the note. The handwriting was the same as on the reheating instructions, careful, slightly uncertain. "Mr. Chen, I know I'm just the maid and it's not my place, but I lost my husband 3 years ago. The pain doesn't go away, but it does get quieter. On the really hard days, I read Psalm 34:18. It helps me remember I'm not alone. You aren't either. I'm praying for you. Sophia." At the bottom, she'd added, "P.S. You've been skipping breakfast. I left homemade chicken soup in the fridge. My abuela's recipe. It won't fix anything, but it's something warm." Marcus sat up in bed, the note trembling in his hands. When was the last time someone had prayed for him? When was the last time anyone had noticed he was skipping meals? That he wasn't sleeping? That he was barely surviving? He looked up the verse on his phone. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Something broke open inside him, a dam he'd been holding back for 6 months. Tears came in waves, rolling down his face as he clutched that small piece of paper. She'd seen him. Really seen him. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the Forbes list fixture, just a man in pain. For the next 3 days, Marcus continued his test, but now with growing shame and a different purpose. Each morning he pretended to sleep, watching as Sophia performed small acts of invisible kindness. She brought different flowers, daisies, tulips, roses, each time with a different handwritten note. One quoted poetry, another shared a memory of her husband. One simply said, "It's okay to not be okay." She adjusted the temperature when she noticed he was shivering. She left his favorite books on the nightstand. Though he'd never told her which ones they were, she'd simply observed. She even started leaving the business section of the newspaper folded to articles about philanthropy and mental health advocacy, as if gently suggesting that his pain might someday help others. On the 4th morning, Marcus couldn't keep up the pretense anymore. When Sophia entered his room, he was sitting up, her notes spread on the bed before him, tears streaming down his face. She froze, her eyes widening with fear. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. I'll pack my things." "No," his voice cracked. "Please don't go." She stood there, clutching her cleaning caddy like a shield, looking ready to bolt. "I was pretending," he admitted, his voice raw, "to be asleep. I wanted to see. I needed to know if anyone cared. If anyone saw me as more than just—" He gestured vaguely at the opulent room. "All this." Sophia's expression shifted from fear to something softer. She set down her caddy and, in a gesture that would have been unthinkable a week ago, sat carefully on the edge of a chair near his bed. "My husband was a janitor," she said quietly. "We had nothing, but we had everything. When he died, people told me I was lucky, that at least I had my health, my job, my family, but none of that stopped the pain." She looked directly at him for perhaps the first time. "Pain doesn't care how big your house is, Mr. Chen. It only cares how big your heart is, and yours is breaking." "I don't know how to do this," Marcus whispered. "Elena was my compass. Without her, I'm lost." "Then maybe," Sophia said gently, "you need to find a new direction. Not to replace her, but to honor her." "What would she want you to do?" Marcus closed his eyes, thinking of Elena's endless charity work, her passion for helping others, the way she'd always seen the person behind the position. "She'd want me to be better." "To do better." When he opened his eyes, Sophia was smiling, a real smile that transformed her shy features. "Then maybe that's where you start." That afternoon, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. He announced a new initiative, the Elena Chen Foundation, dedicated to supporting widows and widowers struggling with grief. He hired Sophia as his personal consultant, tripling her salary and asking her to help him understand what people really needed, not what a billionaire thought they needed. Over the following months, the foundation opened grief counseling centers across the country, provided financial support to families dealing with loss, and created support networks that connected people who understood the unique pain of losing a spouse. Marcus started speaking publicly about his grief, shattering the stoic CEO image. His vulnerability gave others permission to acknowledge their own pain. Donations poured in. Lives were changed. But the biggest transformation was in Marcus himself. He laughed again. He called his son daily. He found purpose in helping others navigate the darkness he knew so well. And every morning when Sophia arrived, no longer invisible, but a cherished friend, she still left a note on his dresser. Not because he needed saving anymore, but because some gestures of kindness are too precious to stop. 1 year later, at the Foundation's anniversary gala, Marcus stood at the podium, his voice steady and strong. "A year ago, I was drowning," he told the crowd. "Not in debt or scandal, but in grief so profound I couldn't see past it. I thought I'd lost everything, but a woman who had every reason to stay, invisible, who had her own pain to carry, chose to see mine. She taught me that the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in moments of human kindness, in the courage to acknowledge pain, and in the simple act of showing up for someone who's breaking." He looked toward Sophia, sitting at a table with her family, tears streaming down her face. "She taught me that sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who see us most clearly, and that grief, while it never fully leaves, can be transformed into something beautiful, if we let it." The applause was thunderous, but Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy watching. Sophia mouthed 2 words across the crowded room. "Thank you." He shook his head and mouthed back, "No, thank you." Because she'd given him something no amount of money could buy. She'd given him hope when he'd forgotten what it felt like. She'd reminded him that even in our darkest moments, we're never truly alone. And sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can save a life. That night, Marcus went home to his penthouse. No longer a mausoleum of grief, but a home filled with purpose. On his dresser sat Sophia's latest note. "Proud of you. Elena would be too." He smiled, placed the note with all the others he'd kept, and for the first time in over a year, slept peacefully through the night.